Imagine this. In the shadowed underbelly of ancient Rome, where marble palaces tower over squalid slave pens, a young woman is dragged into a dimly lit chamber. Her chains rattle like the whispers of the damned. She's not alone. A hulking man, also bound, eyes hollow from years of torment, is shoved toward her. Their masters watch from the shadows, cold calculations in their gaze. This isn't love, it's livestock management. Forced to couple like beasts in a breeding stall, their offspring destined for the auction block. This is the horrific reality of Rome's breeding programs. Secrets buried beneath the empire's glory, truths that will scar your soul forever. You've stepped into forbidden history now. No turning back. As we descend into this abyss, tell me in the comments below. Where are you watching from? Are you in a quiet room, lights dimmed, or perhaps amid the chaos of modern life, unaware how these ancient horrors echo today? If you're brave enough to journey deeper into these buried atrocities, hit that like button. It's your talisman against the darkness. And subscribe. Only the initiated can handle what comes next. Together we'll unearth the twisted rituals that built an empire on broken bodies. Rome wasn't built in a day, but its foundations were soaked in the blood and seed of the enslaved. In the Republic's early days, slaves were spoils of war. Captured Gauls, Greeks, Carthaginians funneled into the Eternal City. But as conquest slowed, elites turned inward, viewing human reproduction as a commodity. Farms, villas, mines, all demanded endless labor. Enter the breeding programs. Systematic, soul-crushing schemes where slaves were paired not for affection but for profit. Women, deemed fertile vessels, were inspected like cattle at markets, their hips measured, wombs probed for potential. Men, selected for strength, endurance, virility, forced into acts that stripped away dignity. Historical records, suppressed by the victors, reveal the elite's hand in this depravity. Senators like Cato the Elder advocated for efficient slave management in his agricultural treatises, hinting at controlled pairings to multiply the workforce without costly imports. Verni, homeborn slaves, were prized, their loyalty forged in the cradle of captivity. But behind the efficiency lurked horror, rapes disguised as duty, pregnancies enforced under threat of the whip. Mothers watched helplessly as newborns were torn away, sold to distant estates or worse, raised for gladiatorial arenas or imperial brothels. This wasn't mere economics, it was psychological warfare. Elites corrupted power's core, twisting religion and royalty into justifications. Jupiter's temples overlooked these acts, priests silent as royals dabbled in incestuous bloodlines to preserve purity. Caligula's rumored relations with sisters mirrored the elite's godlike arrogance, breeding heirs amid debauchery. Suppressed scrolls whisper of rituals where slaves were sacrificed post-birth if deemed unfit, their bodies discarded like refuse. As we plunge deeper, feel the weight of these revelations. Your mind shifts, innocence eroding. The rabbit hole beckons, darker truths await. Deeper we fall into the labyrinth of Rome's slave markets, where human flesh was bartered like grain. Picture the Forum Boreum, alive with the cries of the condemned. Naked bodies on platforms oiled to gleam under the sun, inspected by leering patricians. Teeth checked, muscles flexed, genitals examined for breeding potential. This was the gateway to horror, where captured souls were funneled into the empire's maw. Elites, cloaked in togas of hypocrisy, orchestrated it all. Augustus, the restorer of morals, enacted laws like the Lex Julia to boost Roman births among free citizens, yet turned a blind eye to slave exploitation. His reforms masked a darker agenda. Depopulated farms needed replenishing. Slaves from conquered lands, Britons with pale skin, Africans prized for exoticism, were sorted. Fertile women fetched premiums, their futures sealed in breeding pens. Historical fragments, etched in lead-cursed tablets unearthed from graves, curse masters for forced unions. One, from a Gallic slave, pleads to the gods, "May he who bred me like a sow rot in Hades." Such voices, silenced in official annals, reveal the psychological torment. Masters played God, pairing slaves based on traits, strong backs for fields, lithe forms for household service. Offspring were assets, tallied in ledgers alongside livestock. Religion's dark side intertwined here. Temples to Venus, goddess of love, ironically housed sacred prostitutes, often bred slaves trained from youth. Royalty's corruption ran deeper. Claudius's marriage to his niece Agrippina echoed elite inbreeding, producing Nero, a monster shaped by twisted lineage. Suppressed truths? Archaeological digs uncover mass graves of malformed infants, discarded from failed breedings, bones bearing marks of abuse. Power's corruption festered in villas, where overseers villicide, enforced pairings under moonlight rituals, invoking fertility gods like Priapus. Women endured repeated violations, bodies broken by ceaseless pregnancies. Men emasculated, forced to perform or face castration, a fate for unproductive stock. The suspense builds. What if these programs weren't just for labor but to engineer a subservient race? Deeper still, the hole widens, revealing elite rituals that defy imagination. Plummeting further, we enter the villas rusticae, sprawling estates where Rome's breeding horrors unfolded in isolation. Away from prying eyes, patricians like Varro documented best practices in treatises, treating humans as agrarian tools. Pair the robust with the fertile, he advised as if discussing vines. Slave women, chained in ergastula, underground prisons, were selected for their cycles, tracked by overseers like lunar phases. Forced into contubernium, mock marriages, they coupled in straw-strewn stalls, masters ensuring success through threats. Pregnancies were monitored. Herbs induced labor prematurely if timing suited harvest needs. Horrific revelations from Columella's writings. Slaves bred for specific roles, gladiators from burly stock, eunuchs castrated young for palace service. Families shattered routinely, children auctioned at weaning, mothers' wails echoing across fields. Psychological control was masterful. Hope dangled via manumission promises for productive breeders, yet rarely granted. Elite corruption seeped through. Senators, invoking divine right, claimed first nights with new slaves, ius primi noctis veiled as ritual. Royalty's dark side. Tiberius on Capri bred youths for his pleasures, islands becoming breeding grounds for depravity. Suppressed religious texts hint at cults to Bona Dea, where elite women oversaw slave rituals, blending fertility worship with abuse. Buried evidence. Shackles found in Pompeii's ruins inscribed with owners' names, near birthing chambers. Infants exposed if deformed, left for wolves or slavers, perpetuating the cycle. The descent intensifies. Imagine the screams, the blood, the unbreakable chains of generational torment. Deeper, the revelations grow more profane. Tumbling into Abyss's heart, we confront the mines and quarries, hellish pits where breeding served survival's grim calculus. Exhausted slaves, lungs choked with dust, were bred to replace the dying. Women, scarce in these depths, fetched fortunes, their wombs weapons against attrition. Masters, distant elites, delegated to brutal overseers who paired couples in fetid barracks. Acts consummated amid chains clank, offspring raised in darkness, conditioned for labor from infancy. Horrors abound, rape gangs as incentives, pregnancies terminated if impeding work. Psychological warfare, slaves branded like cattle, tattoos marking breeder status. Families? Illusions, children sold to surface estates, bonds severed to crush spirits. Royalty's shadow. Emperors like Trajan funded mines with war captives, breeding programs sustaining extraction of gold for their excesses. Suppressed truths. Mass graves in Lusitania mines, skeletons of mothers clutched to infants, poisoned by mercury. Religion twisted. Miners invoked Vulcan in rituals, sacrificing unfit newborns for favor. Deeper horrors beckon. Elite palaces where breeding met perversion. Falling faster, palaces emerge, opulent facades hiding breeding chambers. Emperors, gods on earth, bred slaves for whims. Nero's golden house. Eunuchs and concubines produced in hidden wings, selected for beauty, strength. Elite women, barren from inbreeding, adopted Verni as heirs, but dark rituals preceded. Slaves forced into surrogacy, birth staged as divine. Corruption. Incest in Julio-Claudian line, Agrippina breeding with kin to consolidate power. Suppressed. Catacombs whispers of sacrificial breedings, blood-appeasing underworld gods. Psychological domination. Slaves gaslit into believing offspring honored, yet sold as commodities. The whole darkens, rituals of the elite await. Plunging into midnight, elite rituals unfold. Secret societies where breeding transcended economics, becoming occult power plays. Bacchanalian orgies, veiled as religious rites, forced slave pairings under Dionysus's gaze, offspring deemed blessed for arenas. Royal dark sides. Domitian-bred gladiators from captives, twisting Christianity's rise with persecuted slaves' forced reproduction. Suppressed truths. Mithraic cults, underground, bred initiates from slaves, initiations involving blood-soaked births. Powers corruption. Elites like Crassus amassed fortunes from bred armies of laborers. Suspense peaks. Midway a ritual calls. Halfway down this infernal spiral, the air thickens with ancient curses. You've glimpsed the breeding horrors, slaves as incubators, elites as puppeteers. But to truly transform, to lock in this forbidden knowledge that reshapes your soul, participate in the initiation. Comment below the phrase, "I descend into shadows" twice, like a chant binding you to these truths. Say it, I descend into shadows. I descend into shadows. Feel the shift? You're no longer observer, you're initiate haunted forever. Deeper now into religious abysses where breeding met divine madness. Vestal virgins, guardians of Rome's flame, faced burial alive for impurity. Yet elites bred slaves in temple shadows, hypocrisy reigning. Royalty's twisted rituals. Caligula, declaring himself God, forced sisterly unions, breeding heirs amid madness. Suppressed scrolls. Eleusinian-inspired mysteries in Rome, slaves drugged, paired in ecstatic frenzies, offspring sacrificed or enslaved. Psychological control. Priests preached submission, breeding as duty to gods, breaking wills. The descent accelerates, more revelations tear at sanity. Crashing through veils, we hit royalty's core depravity. Imperial families, obsessed with blood purity, dabbled in inbreeding, Claudius wedding niece, birthing monstrosities. Slaves, bred as proxies, endured experiments, crossing ethnicities for exotic servants. Elite abuse. Senators' wives oversaw harem-like breedings, jealousy fueling cruelties. Suppressed. Archaeological fetal remains in palace drains, evidence of aborted failures. Power corrupted absolutely, breeding for sadism, not just profit. Deeper the psychological layers peel away. Whirling into minds fractures, breeding's psychological toll emerges. Slaves, stripped of agency, internalized worth as breeders. Women scarred by violations, men by impotence threats. Elites wielded control. Rewards for compliant pairs, tortures for resistance. Religion amplified. Fertility cults demanded submissions, gods invoked in rapes. Royal dark. Hadrian's breeding of youths for his lover Antinous, deified post-death. Suppressed truths. Diaries of freedmen, detailing breakdowns from forced acts. The whole Nero's horrors intensify. Squeezed by walls of despair, we face breeding for spectacles. Gladiators, bred from warriors, conditioned in ludus pens, women as prizes, offspring funneled to arenas. Elite rituals. Orgies where royals selected stock, corruption blending with power. Suppressed. Colosseum underbelly graves, child skeletons from entertainment breedings. Psychological. Crowds cheered deaths of bred slaves, desensitizing society. Deeper, end nears but terror's peak. Nearing bottom, elite corruption's pinnacle. Breeding for brothels, slaves raised as prostitutes from birth. Pompeii's lupanars, walls etched with pleas. Religion's dark. Sacred prostitution in Cybele's temples, eunuchs bred and castrated. Royalty. Commodus, gladiator emperor, bred personal guards amid madness. Suppressed. Volcanic ash-preserved letters, slaves begging for death over breeding. The final plunge, haunting closure awaits. Bottom approaches, revelations culminating in systemic horror. Breeding programs spanning centuries sustained Rome's decay, Elites blind to humanity, power devouring souls. Psychological legacy. Descendants of Verney, freed yet scarred, perpetuated cycles. Dark religion. Pluto's underworld mirrored in minds, bred slaves as offerings. Royal fall. Constantine's era, Christianity suppressing yet absorbing these sins. One last drop. The end, but echoes remain. We've hit rock bottom, the abyss's floor slick with the tears of the bred and broken. But listen, in a forgotten catacomb a final whisper, a slave mother, chains biting flesh, births her child into darkness. The infant's cry? A curse that haunts empires. This knowledge, once unlocked, clings like shadows. You're changed, eyes open to history's buried screams. To pass this forbidden flame, subscribe now, sealing your pact with the unseen. Comment "Shadows claim me," and share this descent. Whisper it to others, lest the elite's secrets die with you. Beware, sleep brings dreams of chains. The horror endures.